Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start. To find your table would be much appreciated. Good morning and welcome to the annual State of the Region address here at the magnificent Scotiabank Convention Centre. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a full agenda, and may I ask you to please rise for the singing of O Canada, performed by Juliette Dunn and Peter Shea with the Niagara Jazz Festival. Thank you.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true North, strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you to Peter and Juliette, and thank you to the Niagara Jazz Festival. They're celebrating their 5th year and are expanding into 2 weekends, which will take place the last 2 weekends of the month of July. So it's going to be an amazing event. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mishka Balsam, and I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for attending today, and I would like to express our appreciation to our title sponsors, PenFinancial Credit Union and Bell, for partnering with us on this event, along with Subaru Niagara, Niagara Workforce Planning Board, Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, Janice and Robin Communication, Scotiabank Convention Centre, UTV, Soundbox Niagara, St. Catharines Standard, Welland Tribune, and the Niagara Falls Review. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me for a round of applause. Today's keynote will be live streamed on your TV as well. You can find it in the days to come there at the same time. Our hashtag for the day is #StateOfNiagara. So please utilize all the social media you can to get the word out about today's event. The State of the Region Luncheon is a collaborative effort of a number of business organizations, and we are pleased this afternoon to be joined by board leaders and staff executives from across the region. Please join me in recognizing the following partner organizations: the Chambers of Commerce for Niagara-on-the-Lake and Lincoln, the Niagara Association of Realtors, the Niagara Construction Association, the Niagara Home Builders Association, and Niagara Industrial Association. Thank you very much to the board and staff of those organizations for actually your commitment to Niagara's prosperity. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the elected official and some dignitaries who are with us in the room. If I could ask, please, to have all the regional councillors, mayors, and city councillors to please stand up, along with MPPs Cindy Forster, Sam Osterhoff, and Wayne Gates. And if I could also please ask the president for Niagara College and Dr. Patterson and Dr. Ferron for Brock University to please also rise. Thank you for all that you do. It is also a privilege to welcome to Niagara Hamilton Mayor Fred Eisenberger and Waterloo Regional Chair Ken Seiling. Thank you for being here. The format for today's luncheon is slightly different. We're starting out with a roundtable conversation, followed by lunch, and then finish off with the keynote. At this time, may I introduce CEO Mario de Divitiis with Niagara Workforce Planning Board, one of 26 regional planning boards in Ontario, making up the local board network. Niagara Workforce Planning Board is an analytical team who bring accurate and future-focused workforce data to the public, private and non-profit sectors in an effort to enhance decision-making that will advance Niagara's economic prosperity. Using their services allows you access to the formidable skill set and resources of their dedicated team of researchers who are specifically tasked with devoting their attention and expertise to looking into detailed labor market requests. Data is critical to all decisions, and we are fortunate to have such a great resource at our fingertips. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mario to the stage.
Good morning, everybody. Great to be here. A big thank you to Mishka and the GNCC for allowing me to channel my inner childhood dream of becoming Peter Mansbridge today, so I appreciate that. Before we start today, I wanted to take you through a little bit of a different approach to why we're doing the format today. So there's a couple slides that we're going to take you through, if I can get this corrected and moving, to basically take you through the reason of why we've set up this tri-panel today with 3 different regions. So there's 3 different slides that I'm attempting to kind of get on the screen. And I'll start here. So I'll give you a little bit of a backdrop in terms of the Niagara region and our context. So roughly 197,000 jobs in the region. You'll see a couple items on the screen. So the star logos there articulate where those jobs are typically found. So you could see roughly around 40% of the jobs within the region are found within wholesale and retail trade, healthcare and social assistance, and accommodation and food services. You also see that roughly 98% of the businesses are employing 1 to 99 people. So these are statistics that I would say, and hopefully you'll see this throughout the entire morning, is not that different than a lot of other communities. The approach today is to give you a little bit more of a context of how, we are very different in some ways, and we're also strong in the same, ways as well. So this next slide is actually a historical labor force pattern of the CMA comparisons. So what we've done here is we've actually articulated St. Catharines, Hamilton, and the KW area. And you could see across the board, all 3 communities have had the privilege of a lot of growth in unemployment across it. So whether you're looking at full-time employment to our unemployment rate. So a lot of things to be celebrated for the region of Niagara, as well as Hamilton and KW. The next slide I wanted to touch on will also explain some of the approach today in terms of the interconnectedness between the regions. This slide actually shows our commuter flow. So oftentimes we wonder, how big of a draw is the GTA? Where are people actually going every day? So you could see on this slide the top 5 destinations within each region and where they're going. So within Niagara, a good majority of our workers, actually roughly close to 88%, actually work within the communities of Niagara. Where's the next biggest destination for local Niagara folks to work? That would be Hamilton. You'll see in Hamilton, a good percentage of their commuters also work within the city of Hamilton. Their top destination in terms of work is Toronto, and you'll see in KW, likewise, they're a community that also employs a lot of people within their region, and their top 2 destinations are Guelph and Toronto. So what this hopefully does for you is just to show that, although we don't necessarily get the chance to hear and see what KW and Hamilton are doing, today's going to be an opportunity for you to dialogue with their leaders in terms of, what are some of the strengths and challenges that they're going through? What are some of the strengths and challenges that we're going through? And you could see in terms of this, and I'm sure, one of the items will be in and around transit and transportation, how big of a effect that not just Niagara's community, but Southern Ontario's community is having around transportation. So you could see that footprint pretty clear here in terms of all the powerful movement that GO can bring to our community and is actually bringing to our 2 friends who have joined us today. So that is just a little bit of the background. I'm now going to actually bring in each regional chair to come join. So we're going to first start with Ken Seiling. Ken is a lifelong resident of Myra, Ontario. Ken started his public life as a councillor and spent 7 years as the mayor of Woolwich Township. Ken was first elected as regional chair of Waterloo in 1985 and again in 1988, 1991, and 1994. In 1997, he became the first directed elected regional chair in Waterloo Region. Get this, he was re-elected in 2000, 2003, 2006, 2010, 2014. So essentially, we have the Yoda of regional governance in the room today. Or for our comparisons, the Jim Bradley, I guess. Prior to being elected as regional chair, Ken taught at Waterloo Collegiate Institute before becoming director of the Wellington County Museum of Archives. He also served as the executive on the Ontario Museum Association, including a term as the president. He has served as the chair of the Waterloo Region Police Services Board, and while being a regional chair is a unique role, Ken has also had the special privilege of being the chair of the Regional Chairs of Ontario. So Ken, if you will join. And just that first. Ken's particular with his furniture. Next up is Fred Eisenberger. Fred grew up in the city of Hamilton after his family immigrated to Canada from the Netherlands at the age of 8. Fred became a life of public service in 1991, where he spent 3 terms, one of 2 as alderman in Ward 5 from 1991 to 2000. Fred has been the mayor of Hamilton since December 1st, 2014. This is his 2nd term, having previously served from 2006 to 2010. Previously, Fred served as chair of the Hamilton Port Authority prior to his election in 2006, and as the president and chief executive officer of the Canadian Urban Institute. For those of you who have not actually heard of that institute, I would strongly, coming from a data background, encourage you to do some of the great research that work has done, and a lot of that was led by Fred's leadership. So Fred, if you'll join to the front and maybe give a round of applause for Fred. Now, our last speaker has a home field advantage, so we're going to leave his bio for a little bit later, but he is our own regional chair, Alan Caslin. So, Alan, please come join us at the front. And I had told Fred and Ken that I like to refer Al as the best-dressed regional councillor that I know. So I'm going to take a seat, and we're going to start our panel discussion. Sandy, I know you're worried about that last designation. So to start, we're going to build off, just to get things, I guess, a little moving in the direction that we're headed in. I'm going to ask you to describe your community in one phrase, and then try to explain, why you chose that phrase. So why don't we start with Ken?
So you didn't tell me how many words the phrase could be. So I came down with 4 terms: caring, progressive, healthy, and collaborative. And the reason I chose those is because we've had a long history of being a caring community. We've been the source of many social services that developed across Ontario over the years, a sense of stewardship and looking after people, and that has been pervasive throughout our time as a region and even prior to our time as a region. Progressive, we've always been on the leading edge of doing things for the whole history of the region. As the economy changes, the businesses in that region, have changed and moved with the times and worked together and created a university to fulfill some of those needs, and continues to work and is always sort of looking ahead, trying to see what the next step is and working together, and as a group we work together that way. When I say healthy, I think that our economy is healthy. Lots of employment, lots of investment, lots of jobs. At the same time, we have a quality of life that many people have come to expect, and those people who come to the community are quite surprised to find the quality of life we enjoy in the region of Waterloo. And collaborative is a word I think that's really important, because we have we were destined to be amalgamated in the late 20th century for whatever reasons. I won't get into it. We were not, which really focused on our ability to work together as communities. And so the one thing that provincial government did at that time is they shrank all of our councils. We were 7 municipalities plus the region. We've had a long history of working together. We have a very collegial council. We don't fight. We don't have cliques. We have a common vision, and we work towards that. We work very carefully with all of our bodies. We work closely within the community. There are collaborative bodies. For example, the technology sector has formed an organization called Communitech, which has worked on its own to develop the high-tech sector. But we also have land use policies and a variety of policies which promote agriculture, which is an important part of our economy still. And we work together. The area municipalities and the regional council and the regional councils all work together. Very seldom you'll ever find us fighting among ourselves, because we have this common vision of where we want to go. And that's driven the region. And so, for example, when the University of Waterloo had trouble finding a way of developing its technology park, the region got additional money from the province, which we then worked with the area municipalities to move into their university to allow a technology park to be developed. When it came down time to doing our land use planning, we realized that if we were going to have tight boundaries and stop the urban sprawl in our region, that our greenfield development would have to be concentrated in 1 or 2 municipalities. And all 7 municipalities agreed on who would get the greenfield developments, and others would be restricted and that sort of thing. So there's a collaborative approach that's worked very well for us. And we also work collaboratively with our friends and our partners along the way. So the tech corridor and all those sorts of things are a reflection of how people work together in Waterloo region.
Great. I'm going to put that word collaboration in the parking lot right now, and probably come back to it a little bit later. Fred, why don't you describe your community in one phrase and explain?
I'm just impressed by how good things are in Kitchener-Waterloo. They don't fight. There's no conflict at council. It's kumbaya. That's amazing.
You're welcome to come up anytime.
Yeah, I should come down and have a look at what's happening there. Ken went on a little longer, so I forgot my phrase, actually. I'm sorry about that. And you can't do it in a phrase. So Hamilton is a community that's undergoing a significant renaissance from a kind of an older industrial town to now a much diversified economy that has flourished into biomedical sciences, health sciences, digital connectivity and digital capacity, in fact. Looking to advance manufacturing, and the recent announcement of the supercluster that KW and Hamilton and Toronto are all involved in is really the next iteration of where the future jobs are going to be. So we're looking forward. We're progressive, or at least I am. Can't say that everyone is. I'm progressive. I'm looking forward. I'm not doing not necessarily the immediate things, but trying to look down the road to see where the future jobs are going to be and how are we matching our educational institutions with our future job demands going forward. So, you can't park collaboration yet because you know, one of the reasons we were identified as as one of the top 7 intelligent communities is, and formerly won by the Kitchener-Waterloo, in fact, is because of collaboration. You know, all of that great asset is good, but if you're all working independently, you're not going to get to where you need to be. And so the collaboration that we're seeing now as a community, with some differences and some challenges, but notwithstanding, is really the hallmark of how we're going to progress and move into our future, which has everything to do with new generation jobs, innovation, and new skills, new advanced skills that are going to be the future employers coming up.
Alan, how about yourself?
Thanks, Mario. And first of all, I want to thank my colleagues for being here today. It was great of them to come down and be part of this presentation. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. And I want to tell everybody, this is not scripted. This is, I don't know what they're going to say. So if you see me taking notes, it's just because I want to make Niagara better. I'm going to be plagiarizing the best practices, shamelessly. But when I think about Niagara, they wouldn't let me up here without a phrase, so I had to stay awake all night and think of one. And my phrase I think that accurately represents what Niagara is all about is that Niagara is on the move, catch us if you can. And the reason I say that is a lot because of how far we've gone in just the simple term of the 4 years of this term. We finally, as a region, all started to row in the same direction. I mean, our region was established in 1970, and it took this long for us to finally say, look, it's not us against you. In fact, we're all in it together. You know, we all go down together if we don't. And examples of that are, and I'll talk about it in just a little while, but examples of that are GO Train, Canada 2021 Games. You know, these sorts of things don't happen when there's disparity within the region. So because of the fact that we've finally started talking to one another on serious matters and started pulling together on important issues, I think we finally got the traction we need, and we finally found our stride. Catch us if you can.
All right. Well, I'm not that fast of a runner, so I don't know if I could. So my second question, I'm going to start with Fred because you touched on it. If you could, outline a significant challenge that's happening in Hamilton. And it's going to be a 2-part question, so likewise, every challenge has an opportunity. So what would be the opportunity that's ahead as well?
So my opinion is our significant challenge as we're moving through economic development and we're all pursuing the next generation of jobs and looking for new industries to come. One of the downsides of all of that great push for prosperity is poverty on the other side of the scale. And so I think for all of our communities, that's our biggest challenge. It's probably the unseen part of our challenge, but we need to put more focus on things like affordable housing, and certainly we're supportive, or I'm supportive of the study of basic guaranteed income, and supports that are going to help folks that are being left behind by artificial intelligence. The new generation of jobs may not be the same volume that we're seeing today, and so we already see too many people at or below the poverty line. In Hamilton right now, it's 1 in 5 kids are living at or below the poverty line. That's a significant number that we just cannot ignore. So yeah, we're working on both sides of the equation. We want to pursue economic development, but we also want to provide the kind of compassionate support that allows people to have a decent standard of living in some manner or another, which is also good for our economy. So poverty can drag us down completely if we don't address it. So what we did in Hamilton was we recently had a merger between St. Catharines, Hamilton, Vaughan, Mississauga, I'm going to forget a few, Barrie, and Electra merger. And so that merger actually produced an additional dividend that came to the city of Hamilton, and I managed to convince council to quickly grab that dividend of about $5 million and apply that to affordable housing for the next 10 years. That's not a solution for the poverty issue, but it's certainly an assist. And that will help actually generate and leverage more dollars from our federal and provincial partners so that we can actually provide and get on top of that 6,000 unit backlog that we have in the city of Hamilton in terms of social housing and affordable housing. So I see this, I see our biggest challenge being, yes, let's look for those new generation jobs and find out where the next advanced manufacturing skills are going to be. Let's see if we can channel people into those, but at the same time, appreciate and understand that there's going to be a poverty picture that we're going to have to deal with, or else we are going to have much more challenges going forward.
Alan, why don't I go to you for this one? Your significant challenge and biggest opportunity.
So when I think about Niagara and I think about what our biggest challenge is, our biggest challenge is also our biggest opportunity, in my opinion. And that is planning for the next generation. Planning for 2021 or 2041, which we're all doing right now. Let's face it, we're right in the middle of our master plan for water, wastewater. We're in the middle of our transportation master plan. Everybody knows about the GO train. Everybody knows about intermunicipal transit. But all these plans take a lot of thought when you're thinking about not only today, but you're thinking about the future. So really, we're trying to plan Niagara for the future, not only in infrastructure, but also our economic development. We've got a master plan that's under development now for economic development. And what does that look like for Niagara? And a good example of that would be the GO train. So we know that GO train is coming to Grimsby first, and then St. Catharines and Niagara Falls. So what happens when it comes to Grimsby? Do you just get off the train? No, you get off the train and you got to get to where you need to go, whether that be home, work, or school. So we need to build hubs, community hubs around those GO stations. And that's something that we've been focused on as a council, on making sure that it doesn't get in front of us and that we stay on top of it. So planning for 2041. But it's difficult. So it's our biggest challenge. It's our biggest opportunity.
Okay. Ken, what about yourself?
Well, there are a number of challenges that we're facing out there. One on the economic side is that we are actually, with the growth of the tech sector, and we have a labor shortage. At any one time now, there are between 2,000 and 3,000 unfilled jobs in the tech sector right now that can't be filled in our region. And one of the problems that it's highlighted is the problem with the 401 and the inability to move people back up and down the corridor. And so that's why we've been pressing very hard for improved GO service. Now, there's probably nobody here that knows me in my earlier days when I didn't support GO service because I didn't want us to become a bedroom community. But the region has advanced so far that we now have a critical mass of the economy that we need to be able to move people both ways, because the strength of Toronto and our strength that around the university is dependent on having employees that can move up and down that corridor. And they just can't do it these days. We have industries that are running buses into Mississauga and that sort of thing, but this really is hampering our development on that front. So GO service becomes a critical issue for us. But on the human side, we're currently facing, as many other communities, the whole question of the opioid crisis in the community. And we're actually in the business right now of going out to a community consultation on SIS, supervised injection sites, which is a very hot issue if you haven't dealt with it. But I'm sure all of you will at some point or other. And the reality of what it means, because it's a two-edged sword, SIS sites. But we're in the midst of that. But it also points to the larger problem that Fred already alluded to, is this whole question of affordable housing. That as the economy moves ahead and we get all these high-paid sector jobs, we do have another part of the population that isn't moving along with them. And our inability to house these people, not only just affordable housing, but supportive housing. Because part of the solution in the drug area is supportive housing, and the wraparounds that go with supportive housing. So that's a major challenge for us, and we continue to invest heavily in that sector. But it's still a real challenge because poverty and housing are linked. And if you could talk about root causes of crime and drug addiction, all those sorts of things, they're all tied into those areas. So those are challenges for us today.
So can I mention, though, a common theme that you're hearing here today, which you wouldn't have heard 5 or even 10 years ago, which is that we're working as a regional economy as opposed to individual municipalities, much more aligned to showing the strength of our collective region, which includes Toronto, Hamilton, Niagara, Waterloo, as opposed to all of us independently competing against one another on a regular basis. There's no percentage in that, so you see, great partnerships between Hamilton and Niagara, for instance, on the economic development front. Or we see partnerships between Kitchener, Waterloo, and Toronto on the digital front, the technology front, or the collective partnership in terms of the advanced supercluster, all of it incorporating Toronto, Hamilton, Ajax, Vaughan, and everything in between, all the way through to Kitchener, Waterloo. So you see much more of a broader kind of regional approach here, that we're not necessarily shunning the big bag Toronto anymore. It's trying to embrace how we fit into that kind of bigger regional economy. And I think that's an important aspect of what we're doing today that we weren't doing 5 or 10 years ago, and I think really is making a difference.
It's been a long time coming, but back in the late 80s and early 90s, there were some of us who were out there saying that the competition isn't the city down the street, the competition is Portland, the competition is Washington, the competition is Frankfurt, all those sorts of things. And I think people are slowly coming to realize, more and more people are coming to realize that we need to work together within the province collectively to do those sorts of things. That's where our major challenges are.
You know, I'm going to probe that a little bit, because we talk about like kind of the regional economy, and the other items that you all three mentioned was the affordability, the poverty, the opioid. It sounds like that is also a shared challenge across the board. That is not a Niagara problem, nor is it a Hamilton or Waterloo problem. So we've came up with some real great, brilliant solutions and traction on a regional economy. And I'm throwing it out there just to get your feedback on it. How do we do that same regionalized approach, that shared approach, over something like health or something like, regional housing or the opioid crisis? Those are still, from a human level, issues that, we relate to no matter where you are in Southern Ontario. So, Al?
So the world is getting smaller. The world is getting smaller because of the tech industry. The world is getting smaller in every instance except in the needy, except in social housing, affordable housing, except in those areas that don't have access to that kind of technology that can make the world a smaller place. Let's face it, our economic development is driven by the internet service now. You don't necessarily have to be in your home community to be working in Germany or anywhere else, in France or whatever, except in when it comes to poverty. Poverty exists everywhere, and that's a problem that hasn't changed, and I'd suggest it has gotten worse over time, and it's something that I know our council has made it a priority to deal with in affordable housing, the opioid situation that we're all faced with and is coming at us like a freight train, and also the supports that we have. I know our community care is here today, our YMCA, our United Way. All of those are very valuable to our community, and we're counting on them today more than we ever have in the past.
So I would say that in many respects that's already happening. So this integration, regional health is regional health. We have a number of hospitals in the city of Hamilton that are interconnected with hospitals in KW and in Grimsby. There's an ongoing interconnection now through GO Transit. We talk about GO Train, but the GO Bus is pretty ubiquitous, pretty much in the entirety of the province, or at least the populated part of the province. We have similar issues in terms of the opioid crisis, and we're all going through the same kind of iterations on how to convince the population at large that safe injection sites are actually a good thing, not encouraging people to use drugs, but encourage them to use them safely. And I think we're learning from one another in how that happens. And we all face the same challenge. Where do you put a safe injection site, and who's going to welcome that in their community? I know that we're going through that right now in terms of we have it approved. We can't find a location. We're probably going to have to look for one of our own facilities to try and make that happen. So I see a lot of integration already happening throughout the region. The transportation networks are bringing us closer together on an ongoing basis. Our healthcare system is drawing us closer. If we're going to have an integrated transportation system in the province of Ontario, we have to continue to integrate it, and I think that's happening in many ways in terms of Metrolinx, funding different projects in different parts of the province that have value in terms of public transportation in our localized community, interconnected with what GO and GO Transit's already doing. So I see a lot of integration happening already, well beyond individual communities competing with one another.
Ken?
Can't add much to that. I would say on the transit front, it's really important. We only took over transit in the year 2000, and that happened largely because they were afraid of amalgamation, so they threw up transit to us, and it was the best thing to ever happen because we couldn't move that agenda further along until that actually happened. But what we're doing now is we're actually issuing an RFP next week for, we're building a centralized transit hub into which GO will come, VIA will come, our LRT system will come, the entire transit system across the regional system that's there is all integrated, run by one body. So we do the integration, it comes in and will feed into the system. And so within the urban area, we're going to have one complete system which will allow people to move up and down for employment, for shopping, for commercial, for living purposes. And we're actually seeing the regeneration of our downtowns now as a result of the investments in transit and what we're doing within the region. So that's just one example of where I think we have to rethink, communities have to rethink things and take the systems that they do have to further the goals that they have. And so I have to say that transit's been one of our biggest success stories since the region took over it, and growing it, making it accessible to people, spreading it around, and making sure that it ties into the GO system and it ties into the VIA system, and that the intercity bus services all come together, and that will happen over the next, it's happening now and it will happen into the future even more so.
It starts to sound like amalgamation to me, Ken.
Well, I lost that battle.
It's really a popular word in Niagara. It's,
I helped the Hamilton crew.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
So let's go to the transit conversation. You touched on it numerous times already, and I know we're all three communities are on this journey of some serious investment from the province and the federal government into transit. So can we talk a little bit about the importance that transit plays in your community? And also, I would say we're all at different points of that transit journey. So if you could share some of the lessons and considerations that you've learned when trying to integrate some of those significant transit projects. What were some of the challenges, and how did you to use the word collaborative? How did that play its role? So maybe we'll start with Alan.
Yeah, Mario. Let me start with the fact that we're probably the last. We're probably a little bit behind Waterloo and Hamilton, simply because we're the last bastion. When you think of the Golden Horseshoe, the last bastion before you get to the U.S. border. That said, Niagara has its own challenges when it comes to transit, and I know that I hear it every day. If you think about Niagara and our population, and I typically round figure our population at 450,000, if you think about the geographic area of Niagara in terms of acres, let's say, everybody knows what a 10-acre farm looks like or a 1-acre lot looks like. Well, Niagara is 450,000 acres. 450,000 people, 450,000 acres. Most of it with no transit system. That said, our challenge is ostentatious in terms of what we need to do to get transit everywhere in Niagara. And one of the things I said early in the term is that my vision for the far future is that you can get anywhere in Niagara without having to own a car. That said, it's a lofty goal, but it's one that we continue to work on when we consolidate our transit, when we get GO Train finally here. And the catalyst to all that, the catalyst that really made this a reality for us, was the fact that we were unanimous at regional council, and we were unanimous at all the municipal councils around Niagara that we wanted to have transit here, the GO Train here, and we want transit in Niagara for everybody. So I think that said, having a multimodal transit system in Niagara is going to be one of our key priorities moving forward right into next term and following.
So Ken, why don't you start? I know you folks are pretty advanced in that position within the KW area. So some of the importance that you're seeing in the community, and then also some of the lessons and considerations that maybe you can share for some of the folks that are in the room today. Like, we're going through a pretty big journey in terms of transit.
So Fred had the advantage of an amalgamation, which settled any and all problems on the transit front, largely. But in our case, by the 1990s, it became obvious that people couldn't move between Cambridge and Kitchener-Waterloo, and so Regional Council, although our act provided for us to do it, we couldn't do it unilaterally. And so we kept saying to them, you solve the problem, and for 5 years they didn't do it. And then suddenly the threat of amalgamation came along, and I say quite advisedly, the area municipalities, some of them didn't want amalgamation, so they thought, well, what are the irritants right now that might bring about amalgamation? And transit was one of them. So they very quickly threw up the transit systems to the region. And so we had a transit system that encompassed the 3 cities. And so we area rated it to those 3 cities. The rural areas didn't pay into transit. So what we've been doing over the last few years is, as We've begun with the cooperation of we have 4 townships, and we're on our 3rd one right now. We've picked areas where they wanted a route out there. We area rate the route to them to get them used to transit service, and then we're beginning to build on that. So we're into our 3rd township now trying to extend the service. And so we don't threaten the rural areas by saying you're going to have to pay the full freight for the full urban system. You're going to pay your cost initially till we get it up and running and see how it works out, and then we'll move along ahead on that front. So as I say, we're into our 3rd township. The 4th is a little ways down the road, but we're moving that way, and there's been quite good acceptance for it. And I think even more so once the LRT gets up and running, and some of the rural people then will be able to come into the urban area, get on the LRT and move up and down through the entire spine in the corridor. So we've been, I think, fairly successful. We've had to been guarded in the way we've done it, but we had the basic core urban system to start with.
Fred, what about yourself?
So Ken's being very humble, and I'm very jealous because they've got their LRT built, and we're still in the process of developing, designing, and I mean, we're in the process, but we're not quite, in shovels in the ground stage yet. But that's the intention, is to move in that direction. The challenge is that it's really hard to move public transportation initiatives in a community, in our communities, where there's 12 or 13 or 14% public transportation use. And so that's your ongoing challenge, right? How to convince people that are predominantly driving in cars why public transportation is important. You know, it's important because, and Kitchener-Waterloo is just a perfect example of an LRT development that has generated billions of dollars of additional new development along the corridor that has helped reduce the overall tax load, and actually helped increase the overall tax load, and have become an attractor for investment into the community. I don't know how many billions we're talking about now, but the last I heard was something like $2 billion today, before the LRT is even open. And so it's a city building project, but it is about the kind of longer term transportation needs. And the example I often give is that Toronto hadn't invested in their transit system for 40 years. And suddenly they're left with this massive transit problem where the 905 totally developed, and transit was all in the 416 area. And so they had no capacity to actually service the people that are working in the areas where most of the jobs we're gravitating towards. And so we don't want to get caught in that same position. I think Kitchener-Waterloo was very progressive and forward-thinking. We're trying to be the same, is get out ahead of future congestion. We know what's coming. If our population hits 720 or 730 by 2030 or 2040, then we're going to be looking at serious, significant congestion problems. And by developing an LRT, we can get out ahead of that. But it's hard. It's very difficult. It requires a significant amount of leadership and vision to actually get it done. And Ken demonstrated an awful lot of that moving forward, was determined to get this thing done for all the right reasons, and stuck with it. And I'm trying to do the same, and I'm learning lessons from Ken, every day about how to kind of keep maneuvering through that process. But again, it's a very difficult challenge when the mass of your population is car-oriented and a certain part of your population is locked into transit, and it is the notion of them believing to be locked in. And so the irony is that people believe that buses are for the poor folks or the students or those that can't afford a car, and trains are for everybody. And I think you're going to witness that. You can witness that in Toronto, where there's no disparity between who gets on the subway or who gets on an LRT or it gets on a trolley car. There's just everybody uses it because it is just so ubiquitously available that everyone wants to participate and get on. So it's not a poor man's choice. It's everybody's choice because it's more convenient. That's where we want to end up when all this is built in Hamilton.
So in the interest of full transparency, I have to tell you that our LRT system actually started as a land use planning tool. The reason Waterloo has some of the strongest land use policies in Ontario and has for many years, and we wanted to stop rural sprawl. And what we actually do, we developed a growth management strategy, which actually became the basis for Places to Grow, and drew hard lines around our urban areas and said, we're not going into the farmlands. We're not going to develop farmlands and rural lands and environmentally sensitive lands. So if we want to stop that sprawl, how do we do it? And so the biggest planning tool for stopping sprawl is transit, which increases intensification. So it served two goals. It served the ability to do land use planning, which we want to stop this impingement on the rural areas and this planning. We want to stop planning by assessment, which was beginning to creep back in some areas, and also create this intensification corridor along the way, and it's paid off in spades. We're also estimated that just by building the LRT would, over the period of 10 years, would decrease our road budget by about $500 million in planned works. Because in some of those areas, and I'm not sure, I don't know all the roads in Niagara, but I can tell you that some of the roads that we would have expanded to 4 and 6 lanes through neighborhoods and other areas that would have been done, now won't have to be done because we have an LRT system that will take that capacity off.
Yeah, and that's exactly the same equation that we're following through on as well. It's a city building project. It's how do you encourage people to intensify as opposed to continue to sprawl out. And we're already in Hamilton seeing developments that are indicating they're coming because the LRT is on the horizon. And so that's exactly what you want to have happen. And that's truly city building. And that's you have to look down the road, and it makes a difference.
On that, I'm going to probe that city building piece, and you had touched on something, Fred, that the ridership might have been 11 or 14%, and I would say, in this room, being a data fella, I'm sure that would probably be, in the ballpark of what we would see as well. And I also acknowledge that we've got 3 strong leaders here as well, and you're talking about a lot of competing priorities. So, and you're sharing that ideas that we have to move forward, but. Can you talk a little bit about that collaboration piece to say when the rubber hits the road, how is your community or how are you as a leader being able to move that agenda forward while managing some of those real, competing priorities? And I know we talked a little bit about that, and that's not in the script, so we should possibly start with Yoda on that, I'm not sure. But.
That's you, Ken.
So were you turning? Who were you asking?
Well,
we'll start with Fred. I'm just acknowledging.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Ken, you can go.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Fred.
George.
Now I forgot the question.
So the managing the
managing the competing interests. Well, we always have
development.
competing interests. So that's kind of the nature of government today. It always has been. We have economic development drive funding issues, and we have transportation issues, and we compete, roads against transit. This year we're going to probably do about $80 million of road work, and at the same time, $50 million in transit additions and development. So there's all kinds of competing interests. The question is, what kind of vision have you developed for your community, and why are you doing what you're doing? So your budget will determine what your priorities are. And so we've set our priorities as public transportation, infrastructure investment, health and well-being, and affordable housing as kind of the key issues that we're going to be working on for the next 10 to 15 years. I'll say this sheepishly because my friend Ken here will be calling the Premier immediately. We were fortunate that we had our LRT project funded 100%. Which is pretty rare in the province of Ontario, and I know, I don't want to say that too often, too loud in too many places, but the reality is that it was, in my opinion, it was a recognition by the province of Ontario of the kind of tough economic ride that Hamilton has had, not unlike Windsor, where you've lost an enormous amount of industrial capacity, and you're now looking towards the next generation of investment that is going to help turn that around, and that's happening. There's also employment that comes with, all of those major investments. But the competing interests are always there. They never disappear, and it's a matter of creating some reasonable balance so that people don't believe that you're, favoring one area over another. We're trying to make sure that we do all aspects of our community in a fair and equitable way, but with some vision to what is going to be necessary in the future.
Yeah.
Mario,
So that
Mario, let me just step in at this point. Excuse me, Ken. But I just want to, we all have competing interests, right? And that's something that we all face as in our leadership roles, in our daily jobs. But quite frankly, you can't manage what you don't measure. And that's one of the reasons that at the region, at the beginning of this term, we implemented our performance measures, our performance dials, as we call them, to make sure that every single thing that we do, every dollar we spent, we have a plan for it, and it's measured. I mean, we all try and stretch our dollars as far as they will go to see that we don't spend unnecessarily. There's no waste. In fact, most of our work is in the region we have lean managers that look at it and make sure that the dollars aren't wasted. But making sure that we measure everything that we do has taught us where the waste exists and how we can eliminate it. I'm sorry, Ken, I just wanted to stick that in.
I would add, some of the examples that Al had already touched on with, Go Transit and the GE expansion as well, like a great example. Ken, what about yourself?
Fred's comment reminded me of a story about Bob Nixon. Some of you may remember Bob Nixon, the former provincial treasurer at one time, and I remember complaining to him one day. I said, why is everybody else getting the money and we're not? And he said to me, well, Ken, he said, we know that if we don't give it to you, you'll do it yourselves. And that's been the way things have been done in Waterloo for a long time. They see the goal, they want to do things. We're not spendthrifts. We're fairly fiscally conservative, but we see good objectives, and then we're willing to invest in them. And that's where the LRT is a good example. We invested in that. We paid a third of that. We had raised $380 million as our share of it. Fred didn't have to do that.
No, but I'm sure you're asking the Premier for the other $380 million.
No, we asked for 25. We got another 25.
Okay, good.
I'll tell you, Fred, we're making notes as well.
But I think one of the critical pieces is that we work at this together. I think I'm speaking from the region's point of view, but locally, is that you have to have credibility in what you do. The partners have to trust you. So when you go to the senior levels of government, you have to have a credible organization, a credible plan. It's just not bail me out, but here's the good reason for doing it. And also, when you want community agencies to come to the fore and do things, and we depend on community agencies to do an awful lot, particularly in affordable housing and other areas like that, they know that we're good partners, that we've thought out well what we're going to do, and that we won't abandon them, and we'll be there. And so we don't have a... It's a very positive framework, at least. I'm only speaking for Waterloo, and I think probably others are the same thing. We have a very positive framework. It's what can we do? It's not what can we take apart, or what can we do without. It's what can we do and how can we leverage this to get more out of it. And that's been our approach as a region and as a community, is how can we better leverage the resources we do have. We're not out to savage people or get rid of things or do things. It's how can we make things better and take what we've got and do more with it.
So today we're all doing asset management plans, and one of the challenges that all municipalities now face is funding. And so we have requirements from the federal, provincial levels that you get your asset management plans in place, and then come to us for dollars. And the way it's structured today, it's still a cap in hand kind of approach. So as we are looking forward and assessing our asset management needs going forward, the funding from other levels of government are not matching what we are setting out as in terms of our priorities. And so there's a real disconnect there, and I think there's room for having a discussion in the country and maybe between province and municipalities about what's that funding tool that actually provides predictability to municipalities so we can actually fulfill our asset management plans in a logical, reasonable way rather than a stunted way, which is what happens now. So we know what we need. I think all of us know what our needs are in our community, but we don't have the matching funding mechanisms in place between the federal and provincial governments. We're getting more infrastructure money than ever before today, and I think some lament that. I think it's a particularly positive thing. We've all been asking for infrastructure dollars for a long, long time. But it doesn't necessarily have a longer term horizon to it. It's always a 2-year or a 3-year window, and it's very difficult to have capital plans that are based on a 2 or 3 year window. So there's a disconnect between what we're doing in terms of municipalities and planning forward and what our other partners are doing in terms of funding commitments. So,
hopefully you've got the feeling here that, we're not all that different, and we're very interconnected in the communities that we all live and work and play in. I'm going to give you each one chance just to say something in closing. I know Alan's got some time later on this afternoon. So if there's one kind of, message you kind of want to leave the audience, the Niagara community, about the journey we're on, or your own region, feel free. So maybe Ken, we can start with you.
That wasn't on the question sheet.
No, but I felt that was appropriate to
add. Fred alluded to the fact that the province and federal government are important partners, increasingly important partners in what we do as community and our ability to do things. I think that these are particularly interesting times on the municipal level with the provincial election coming along and municipal election coming in the fall. But I think you want to take a close look, and I don't want to be political and enter into the provincial election debate to say, what will our government look like after June? And what does that mean for local municipalities? Is there going to be help there? Is there going to be assistance there? Or are we going to see something that we saw in the 1990s? Those kinds of things. And I think that's the critical piece right now for all of us in municipalities. I think there's a lot of concern and consternation over what the landscape will look like then. And we may have to shift course somewhat or do things differently at that particular time. I know in the 1990s, when all the cutbacks came forward, we had to make some very strong decisions about whether we raise property taxes to make up the shortfalls or whether we cut services to communities. I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but I'm just saying there are various platforms, and I think that's really a critical piece. So you should be asking, I'm talking to you as a municipal politician, you should be asking all the candidates out there, what are you going to do to allow municipalities to develop not only their economic infrastructure, but their human infrastructure, which is really, really critical piece. So my messaging, I guess, is be aware of what might happen or could happen in June and ask all the right questions before you cast your ballot. I would say that cooperation and collaboration is even more and more important as we go forward, and we need to do lots of that, and I think communities have to be able to pull together tightly to do it.
Fred?
Did I mention how lovely it is to be in Niagara? What a wonderful place this is. Wonderful, great convention center. You know what? We would love to have the kind of tourism capacity that you have, but you know, it's wonderful to be in Niagara, and you have great assets in Niagara. And we have great partnerships in terms of economic development with Welland and St. Catharines. Shout out to my friend Walter out here somewhere. Where are you, Walter? The Compassionate City. You know, we have a lot of similarities in terms of what we're doing and what we aspire to. And there's just you know, a world of opportunity between specifically Niagara and Hamilton, I would say, because we have that kind of border affinity. But it does speak to the kind of regional economy approach that we need to continue to foster. And I think that's a very you know, positive objective. And if we look at you know, we're not trying to be the tourism capital of Ontario, nor could we be. And so why would we compete against Niagara in that particular sphere? We are married on the agricultural side, and so agribusiness is very, very important in Hamilton. It's very important in Niagara. We have a port that moves a lot of the agri product, you know, through North America and beyond. And so there are just a whole raft of synergies that we need to continue to work on that will benefit both of our communities. So I'm thrilled that we can continue to kind of work on that kind of relationship, and you know, work on you know, some of the politics. I mean, I may be a little bit more political than you on this one. So I worry that we're going to take another giant step back. And you know, from a municipal perspective, you know, the Harris years, as much as some people enjoyed the cutbacks and the adjusting of the finances, it left municipalities in a very deep hole for a long, long time. And it was just recently that we had the social services uplifted from the municipal tax base. That was a particularly huge drain on the municipality. So I worry that we're gonna take all of this progress that we've had and start cutting and stepping back and not making the kinds of investments that are going to be important to keep our municipalities whole and progressive in a positive direction. And so I'm going to be very concerned about making sure that our Hamilton priorities are what our local candidates are aware of, and that the provincial leaders understand that there is a need for a strong and vibrant collaborative relationship with municipalities that is not only a financial relationship, but also one that integrates how we communicate and how we progress together as a province.
Now I'll allow you to close this panel.
You know, you're going to hear from me later, so I won't take up too much more time. You know, my colleagues have spoken so eloquently. It's easy to talk about good news, and in Niagara we are in a good situation. We finally found our stride, and we're moving forward on a number of different fronts. There's lots of work to do, but we've got plans, and we're ready for the challenge. So, that said, I'll save the rest of it for the speech later.
Great.
Thanks, Mario.
All right. Thank you very much. That was wonderful and very encouraging to look outward. I have some bottles of wine for our guests from out of town. And Mario, I think you have a future at CBC, and Alan, we're looking forward to hearing from you in about half an hour. Enjoy lunch. A local Rotarian, Ken is also a member of the board of directors for the Niagara Children's Centre and the Red Roof Retreat. Ken's cooperative and humanitarian efforts also extends nationally as a member of the board of directors for the Foundation for International Development Assistance, a Canadian charitable organization that provides resources to rural communities in Haiti who are motivated to advance themselves economically by forming a productive agricultural cooperative. And as Ken is making his way to the stage, please enjoy this 1-minute PenFinancial video.
Thank you kindly. We are the unique local cafe, not your average run-of-the-mill chain franchise. We will not be satisfied until all Niagarans are pen financiers. Typically, people who do not bank with PenFi tend to dislike puppies and secretly wish to be absorbed into Toronto.
Oh!
Being a pen financier means investing in local, unique establishments like this one.
And this devil's chocolate ghost pepper cupcake.
Oh boy.
Thank you. And thank you, Mishka. On behalf of PenFinancial Credit Union, it's our sincere privilege and pleasure to sponsor this year's State of the Region address, where we'll hear our regional chair present his annual address to the business community. I'd also like to thank the Greater Niagara Chamber. They continue to act as a great advocate, bring great value to the members, and the bottom line, by doing that, they continue to improve the communities of Niagara. So thank you to the GNCC. I think we can all see today with what's been said by the regional chairs about, we're hearing things like cooperation, communication, strategic planning together. Having events like this has never been more important. And cooperation in communities is actually an imperative, and it's not an option anymore. And that's why we're so proud to be involved. PenFinancial was actually started with that mission in mind. Our sole purpose is to improve the lives and the communities of the people we serve. We're Niagara's truly local credit union. Our sole purpose is to create a member experience that brings value to the lives of people that are dealing with us. Banking products, financial products, candidly, are somewhat generic. The difference in us is we're about enhancing the relationships we have and creating greater relationships with people in Niagara. We're also about giving back to the community, and I'm very proud to say that 10% of our pre-tax profits are driven back into the community in charitable givings. Those are the communities where our 100 employees work, our 22,000 employees work, they live, and they raise their children. So we're aligned totally with what's being said today. So it's my sincere pleasure to introduce the regional chair today. Alan Caslin was elected regional chair on December 11th, 2014. He previously served as regional councillor for St. Catharines from 2010 to 2014. Regional Chair Caslin was employed with General Motors of Canada for 20 years in several capacities and was most recently facilities manager in St. Catharines. Before GM, he worked as project manager for a large engineering firm, Acres International. Under the leadership of Regional Chair Caslin, the term of Niagara Regional Council has launched a consolidated transit model, added over 12,000 new jobs to Niagara, landed the 2021 Canada Summer Games, and most importantly, and we've spoken of it today, they received Go Transit into Niagara. Regional Chair Caslin has been actively involved in youth sports as a volunteer and coach for more than 15 years. Some of the organizations that he has volunteered with include Port Dalhousie Softball, CYO Basketball, and Jets Soccer. He is a past member of several community boards, including the YMCA of Niagara, United Way of St. Catharines and District, and the St. Catharines Jets Soccer Club. He was also a member of the board of directors of Meridian. Regional Chair Caslin's family includes wife Anita, son Kevin, and daughter Kelly. Please join me in welcoming Chair Caslin.
Thank you. Thank you very much. What a great crowd. How did you like the forum this morning? How did you like that? Pretty good. Pretty good. You know, I'd first like to thank the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce for hosting today's event. And with that, how about a big round of applause for the GNCC? I'd like to recognize my colleagues on Regional Council and special guests here today. And then there's a number, so I'll ask if you could please stand up if you're here, and I'll ask if we just hold our applause to the end because there are so many. Councillors, so Regional Council, Councillor Annunziata, Councillor David Barrick, Councillor Brian Beatty, Councillor Gary Burrows, Councillor Sandra Easton, Councillor and Police Board Chair Bob Gale, Councillor Wayne Redekop, Councillor Frank Campion, Councillor Paul Grenier, Councillor Ted Luciani, and Councillor Bart Maves, Councillor Tony Quirk, Councillor Walter Senzik, Councillor Selina Volpatti, Councillor Tim Rigby, and how about a hand for our regional councillors? We also have MPPs in the audience today. Stand up if you're here. MPP Cindy Forrester, MPP Sam Oosteroff, and MPP Wayne Gates. How about a hand for them? I know there's a number of, you know what? I think I forgot Mayor Jeffs. Councillor April Jeffs, she's here. There's a number of city councillors, city and town councillors in the crowd here today, and I want to recognize you all. How about a hand for all the city and town councillors that work so hard each and every day? And lastly, special thanks to my colleagues from Hamilton, Mayor Fred Eisenberger, and Regional Chair of Waterloo Region, Ken Seiling. How about a hand for them? I'd also like to recognize Niagara Region's senior leadership team in attendance today, and you know them. Guys, please stand up when I call your name. Commissioners Ron Tripp, Reno Mustashi, Adrian Jugley, Jason Burgess, Dr. Mustafa Herji, and of course, our CAO, Carmen D'Angelo. You know, guys, with your ongoing commitment and dedication to Niagara, you know, it means so much to us, and we've done so much in such a small period of time. You know, I'll begin by referencing a few words that I started with my first State of the Region address. And that is, you know, at GM we had a saying, hands on the wheel, eyes on the road. You know, these words are even more relevant today. Too often, government and elected officials get caught up in managing only headlines, wading through mid-level priorities, and accepting status quo because that's the way it's always been. 3 years ago, Regional Council and I laid out a vision to combat complacency that had crept into the Niagara region and had stilted our progress for far too long. No longer would we simply accept status quo. No longer would we accept mediocrity as the best we could do. No longer would we go along just to get along at the expense of delivering real and tangible results for the residents of Niagara. Niagara Region would finally keep its hands on the wheel and eyes on the road while maintaining a focus on what's critical. That's why our strategic plan over the past 3 years focused on creating an environment for economic prosperity. And the results are clear. We have implemented foundational changes to the way we do business at the region to ensure your taxes remain low and each dollar is respected at all times. We have kick-started Niagara's economy by aggressively pursuing new businesses and supporting those that already exist in Niagara and are looking to expand. We have made targeted investments to our support systems in Niagara in the many communities that we depend on across the region. Today, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on some of those accomplishments. This term of Regional Council has taken a two-pronged approach for keeping taxes low for residents. First, under the leadership of Budget Chair David Barrick, the Niagara region now undertakes an annual line-by-line review of our budget to ensure each dollar receives the scrutiny it deserves. We call this process scrubbing the books. A business case is now required for any new program, service enhancement, or targeted investment in order to justify added expense to taxpayers. We're also looking at new ways to generate revenue, such as opportunities stemming from the legalization of cannabis. The results of Council's focus on taxation are clear. We have achieved, get this, we have achieved an average of 1.4% in property tax increases during the entire term of Council. Something that we're all proud of. This rate is well below the rate of inflation and is among the lowest in Niagara. The Niagara region will continue to put taxpayers first through the budgeting process. Secondly, Niagara region embarked on a process to significantly strengthen accountability to the public. Within the first 3 months of this term, Niagara region initiated a series of third-party external audits on various areas of the corporation. The Burgoyne Bridge audit was the catalyst for the changes that Council implemented with respect to procurement, document retention, and project management. I'm sincerely proud of leading a Council that with one voice decided to reject status quo that has held our region back for so long. As a result, we have created the first Niagara Regional Department of Internal Controls and Organizational Performance, known as ICOPS. This department includes 5 dedicated internal auditors in addition to a business consulting wing that identifies ongoing process improvements across the organization. With ICOPS in place, the Niagara region now has the internal capacity to strengthen and improve upon our internal processes so we never take a single tax dollar for granted. To date, 5 audits have been completed, ranging from mobile telecom services to cleaning contracts. Between keeping our budgets in check and new internal controls, residents of Niagara can have every confidence that their tax dollars will be spent effectively. We know Niagara's economy has taken a beating since the Great Recession of 2008. And let's face it, we had fallen behind our peers in the Greater Golden Horseshoe. The region, in its strategic plan, recognized that a strong economy provides the basis for everything from a quality of life to a comfortable retirement and can even be considered a social determinant of health. A strong economy provides the tax base needed to fund important programs and services that we rely on every single day. And that's why we are supporting and incentivizing businesses to create jobs here today. We are planning for tomorrow's growth and economic jobs that will create. We are aggressively pursuing new businesses and other economic opportunities to locate and expand in the Niagara region. This is a comprehensive approach that will allow Niagara region to outshine the competition, rise above local politics, media headlines, and deliver what residents want, and that is jobs and economic prosperity. We recognize that we must provide financial and process supports to ensure that we maintain a business-friendly culture. What good are incentives if business must go through bureaucratic and administrative delays? Quite frankly, nobody likes red tape. That's why we've made a series of targeted investments to help businesses and municipalities navigate the development process. Through our Economic Development Department, we are ensuring that residents, ensuring the interest of Niagara's smaller communities are reflected in regional initiatives, and Niagara's positioned to leverage their respective competitive advantages. Further, we are engaging prospective businesses at the outset to assist in navigating the application process between various levels of government through full-time expediters. Being proactive and nimble in this manner allows Niagara region to leverage its financial incentives and attract new investment. Niagara region's contribution, of over $25 million in industrial tax grants and relief allowed Niagara to compete with our neighbors to the south, and that's the U.S. if you don't know, to create over 1,600 new and high-paying jobs across Niagara. The Niagara region has also revitalized the development charge bylaw under the leadership of Niagara Falls Councillor Selena Volpatti, and also chair of our Planning and Economic Development Committee, to ensure that Niagara continues to have the infrastructure available to support current and future economic growth. In fact, the new bylaw offers generous incentive programs to attract new businesses and encourage existing businesses to expand. It provides additional funding for the future infrastructure that will not be borne on the backs of the existing residential and business taxpayers. And it also reflects the market trends across Ontario while maintaining our highly competitive position in the Greater Golden Horseshoe. The bylaw works in tandem with our long-term planning initiatives that include our transportation and water wastewater master plans. We are also building an economic development master plan that will provide a long-term view on job creation that we have lacked previously. These master plans, along with others, are a collaborative effort with Niagara's local area municipalities, and it is truly pan-Niagara in scope. Our strong relationship with our local area municipalities is the cornerstone of Niagara's economy and is the first step to truly leveraging our internationally recognized Niagara brand. Who doesn't know Niagara Falls? We have repositioned our economic development strategy to showcase Niagara as an economic trade corridor. It connects the Ontario economy with the U.S. and abroad. The strategy is based on data-driven statistics that will help us do our work. We have worked to build stronger relationships with our partners in Hamilton, thanks Fred, and Western New York through collaborative projects such as the Amazon HQ2 and Niagara's Foreign Trade Zone program. I'm looking forward to the grand opening of the Foreign Trade Zone office in Fort Erie in next week, April 9th. April 9th it is, and I hope to see many of you there. Further, we are reestablishing our presence with the Canadian consulate offices throughout the United States. These initiatives I have highlighted today, in addition with many others, are contributing to Niagara's economic renaissance. Let me be clear, Niagara is succeeding. Let's face it, if I told you in 2008 that we would have a commitment for GO Train all the way to Niagara Falls, if we were going to be hosting the 2021 Canada Summer Games, if we could successfully attract a large manufacturing GE facility to Niagara, would you have believed it? If I told you that the Niagara region's best year on record for building construction permits was 2017 with $1.34 billion, which represents an increase of 5% over 2016 levels and the highest ever, would you believe that? If I told you that Niagara's unemployment rate would be at 5.2% in February of this year, the lowest since April of 2000, and would be besting both the provincial and national averages, would you believe that? We together are capable of great things, and the future is looking bright for Niagara. In fact, over the past 4 years, Niagara region has witnessed the creation of over 12,700 net new jobs. Let's take a moment to thank Niagara's employers for their continued investment and commitment to the region. How about that? Something we can all be proud about. And of course, our growing economy is giving us the ability to invest in people of Niagara to ensure that Niagara region offers high quality and effective supports that we all depend on. Whether it's employment assistance, emergency services, transit or housing, we all rely on these support services at one time or another in our lives. We have brought innovative solutions such as a system that we call BEN, which stands for Building Employment Networks Niagara. BEN is a Made in Niagara solution that matches Ontario Works clients with employers looking to hire and leverages existing supports like skills training and other programs that we offer. In fact, 40% of the available positions were in manufacturing and trade sectors. Think of it like a dating site with a high rate of success. In November 2017, 245 Ontario Works clients have started a new career. Further, we have seen almost a 9% increase in 2017 of clients taking the first step and re-entering the workforce. There's more work to be done, and the Niagara region will continue to support its residents in finding gainful employment. Let's take a moment to recognize the work of Niagara's Social Services Department for their ongoing commitment to assist those in the community needing a helping hand. How about those? We have also increased our investment in emergency services and introduced new and creative approaches to service delivery. The Niagara region has added almost 44,000 hours, representing a 23% increase in frontline paramedic resources since 2014, this term. We now employ specialized triage units that include a nurse and multi-skilled teams to respond to calls that don't necessarily require an ambulance. This type of system is unique to Niagara, and it is an example for other communities to follow anywhere in North America. Further, the Niagara region has made recent changes in Niagara's ambulances that bring low acuity patients to Fort Erie and to Port Colborne urgent care centers, keeping patients in their home communities wherever possible. In addition to being your regional chair, I am also a proud member of the Niagara Police Services Board under the leadership of Chair Bob Gale. During this term, Chair Gale and the board have worked with Chief McCullough and the service to keep police budget increases to an average, get this, to an average of 2.36%. That's incredible. We've identified over $800,000 a year in ongoing and sustainable savings, all while putting an additional 16 officers on the front lines of Niagara. In addition, the police board is committed to keeping its Port Colborne detachment open to ensure the high-quality police services remain constant in that community. Whether we're talking about EMS or police in Niagara, you can rest assured that the region will continue to invest in these important services in each and every day. And I want to recognize the work of Chief McCullough and his staff and EMS Chief Kevin Smith and his staff in their respective teams for continuing to keep Niagara safe and in good health. How about a hand for them? Niagara region has finally taken concrete steps towards creating a consolidated transit system. With one singular voice and unanimous voice across Niagara, we said, we believe in transit. The Niagara region believes in transit. Our cities and towns believe in transit. Businesses, community agencies, education, healthcare facilities, all believe in transit. Residents believe in transit. How about you guys? Do you believe in transit? I know it's a message that Regional Council and Mayors Campion, Senzik, and Diodati have heard loud and clear. We must put the rider first, and we must do away with jurisdictional lines on a map. To be blunt, the rider doesn't care about lines on a map or which logo goes on a bus. They care about getting to work, getting home, and getting to school. There will be costs, and there will be change. Niagara recognizes this, and that's why resources have been committed from every municipality in the region to ensure that the community's voice is heard. While staff are busy developing a consolidated work plan, we are also working to identify immediate customer service improvements benefiting the rider today. For example, riders are now able to schedule a bus or find a schedule or a bus route information for all Niagara Transit systems on a single app that's available on Apple or Android. We are looking at harmonizing existing trip planning tools and reviewing options for an integrated customer call center. With the $148 million over 10 years that has just been committed by the provincial and federal governments for Niagara's transit, I look forward to working with our local municipal partners in determining how best to invest in consolidated transit. Simply put, the future looks bright for consolidated transit in Niagara. This term of Regional Council is beginning to address the long-standing issue of affordable and social housing in Niagara. No one person should be without a home in Niagara, and we are taking a multifaceted approach to providing long-term and sustainable solutions to Niagara's housing challenge. Every day, regional staff and NRH staff work to make Niagara a better place and support those in need. But unfortunately, the system's broken. Its failings, structural. And we know we must significantly increase our investment in social housing. But we accept that. We know it's got to happen. We have engaged experts to undertake a major alternative service delivery review into how we deliver social housing at the Niagara region. The review has indicated that we need to rethink how we deliver housing in Niagara. And I agree with them. We need to align Niagara's social housing policy with our public health department, with our homelessness and shelter supports, and with our employment supports. I sincerely believe that a resident should be able to come to the Niagara region and have a one-window access to all these supports. That's why Regional Council has directed staff to do the work needed to determine how best to make that a reality while we take steps to increase the supply today. We are planning to invest over $46 million in new social housing units by the year 2026. We are studying the exemption of taxes for Niagara regional housing that could represent an additional $5.8 million to NRH each and every year to invest in new stock. Most recently, we committed an additional $2.3 million to Niagara Regional Housing to support an intensification strategy that will see up to 39 additional units built in Niagara Falls. We are incenting the development community to spur construction of new rental, purpose-built rental and affordable housing stock to help cushion rent increases and market supply. For example, we've entered into a new and innovative long-term partnership with local developer Pantera and also community partner Bethlehem Housing to construct a mixture of 127 affordable, below-market, and market rent units in St. Catharines. These kinds of innovative strategies will provide opportunities for Niagara to further leverage regional resources and bring new units to market. These accomplishments, made collectively by Regional Council, are indicative of the transformative change that we have seen at the Niagara region. Through our strategic planning process, this council committed to creating an environment for economic prosperity, keeping our hands on the wheel and eyes on the road. We have kept taxes low, we have introduced accountability and transparency measures, kickstarted Niagara's economy, and invested in community supports that we all need. We have done away with status quo of complacency, an approach that relied on simply going along to get along. This term of council has laid the foundation for Niagara to finally find its stride. It's now time to build on those foundations. To achieve Niagara's full potential, we must forge the next path of Niagara together. We must be bold. We must focus on the resident. It's our time to come together from every corner of Niagara for Niagara. With that, I want to turn your attentions to the screen.
What's the greatest thing about Niagara? Is it the water or the land? The hotels and casinos are quite something. There's much to be said about nature, and we've got a lot of it. Some might say it's the wine or the fruit that make it great. The weather is nice, sometimes. Is it the people or the places without? Could it be the university or the college? The history is something to talk about, and the future is promising. Is it because we're excited about innovation, or because we love to celebrate tradition? Is it the dogs or the lions? Many would say it's the food that makes Niagara great. Others would say it's our grit and determination. Maybe it's the nightlife or the daytime. Was it the cost of living that kept you here, or one of the 12,700 new jobs that pulled you in? There might not be one specific thing that makes Niagara great, but we can all agree that over the past 3 years, this has become a greater place to live. We're shaping our economy. We're shaping our communities. We're shaping our future. Together, let's shape Niagara.
Great video, wasn't it? Today I'd like to announce the launch of Shape Niagara, the largest strategic consultation effort in Niagara's history. Shape Niagara will provide residents, businesses, community organizations, and others the opportunity to provide their input on how they would like to shape Niagara. These consultations will include dedicated public forums, direct industry and institutional engagements, outreach at community events, and online submissions as well. Regional councillors, along with Niagara's 12 local mayors, will be an invaluable component to this process, and I look forward to working with them in the coming months. The Shape Niagara campaign will provide regional staff the opportunity to develop a background study that will act as a foundation for Niagara's next strategic plan. We will enable the next term of Regional Council to hit the ground running and maintain the built-up momentum of this term. I ask everyone today to help get the word out by using hashtag #ShapeNiagara and by going to our website, niagararegion.ca, to provide your input. Niagara's future is destined to be shaped by all of us. It must be the inspiration of every single resident in Niagara. I invite all of you to come forward in taking part in shaping the future of our region. Let's face it, folks, we're in this together. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Lincoln and Niagara-on-the-Lake Chamber of Commerce, the Niagara Industrial Association, the Niagara Construction Association, the Niagara Home Builders, and the Niagara Realtors, thank you so very much for being here, and thank you, and a round of applause for our Chair Caslin. We're appreciative to all the businesses and organizations who've made today possible. So our thanks go out to our title sponsors, PenFinancial Credit Union and Bell, for partnering on this event, along with Subaru Niagara, Niagara Workforce Planning Board, Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, Janice and Robin Communication, Scotiabank Convention Centre, UTV, Soundbox Niagara, St. Catharines Standard, Welland Tribune, and Niagara Falls Review. And if I could just direct your attention to the small spruce seedling provided by the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. It is part of their initiative to actually plant 1 million trees in Niagara, which I think is an outstanding and amazing initiative. If you have any questions about it or can't take it home, they have a booth and table on the left-hand side, and they can give you all the information that you need in case you want to get further involved in this program. My thanks go to my valued colleagues, Karina, Hugo, Jane, Ryan, Brad, Sean, and last but not least, on her last day today, Amy Lloyd, and all the volunteers who made today possible. I wish you all a wonderful Easter weekend.